That was one of my worst deals because I bought it from a wholesaler. You know how it is. They give you a number, this and that, and I was doing the analysis more or less like I did in the United States. But the numbers in Puerto Rico are really different. Everything is very different.
We shouldn't go by what we see at first glance. Ask for a mortgage from me, whether it's good or bad.
What I've also noticed is that many people don't know about God or evaluate God. It's the same thing that happens here. Evaluate God. The same thing happens here. You have a bunch of wholesalers who think they know.
And that's something that people who go to Puerto Rico on vacation don't have that experience. And that's what changes the people who want to do more for the island, who fall in love with the island.
Please tell me a bit more. You do notary work. You do real estate. You lend money. Right? Yes, indeed. You're conquering the world.
I'm just doing a bit of everything, like the song says, a little bit of everything.
Tell me a little bit about your story, Liz.
Yes. I've been investing in real estate courses since 2009, and I haven't done anything with all of them. I used to do it a little, then I would get scared and back off. 3 years ago, during COVID, I started studying to become a notary, and it was really crazy. She was a friend of mine. Mom always made us all become notaries because she does immigration paperwork, taxes, and everything. So when she needs a notary, she sends one of her daughters.
Before becoming a notary, were you in real estate?
No.
So you took the course, right?
Yes, I was studying real estate. I never did anything.
And why from real estate? Notary. So, it kind of changed a bit, right?
I've had approximately 42 jobs or so in my life up to today. I mean, I always change my shiny object. It's been there since I was little. So real estate has always caught my attention. My ex-husband's parents were investors and they lived in Port Charlotte, Florida.
Real estate.
In real estate, they only made investments. So when I started a relationship with him, I spent a lot of time with his parents and saw how they went to courses, invested, and did their thing. So I always hoped that he would do the same thing, but he never did. He always went to the courses and said, well, first you have to do this, then you can do that, but he never did any of it. I wanted to do it on my own, but I never did that either.
And why didn't he do it? Was it fear, insecurity?
He was still young in terms of age. He was the youngest in the family. And as for me, I'm the oldest in my own family. He was very immature.
But in your case, because you already saw it, it was a model, I imagine you didn't want to emulate that.
No, I wanted to do it with him because we had the relationship and the vision, and it was like, okay, that's your luck. His parents did that, and I also want to do it with my partner and move forward. And he would always say, this, but that. And then we were young too. We were about 21 years old, and we lived in Las Vegas, going out, drink to the clubs. Life always went on, and I've always had jobs. And also in Las Vegas, I worked as a bartender, cocktail waitress, and front desk. And I was making good money. I wasn't right. There was no need exactly. I never did it. And after I got out of that, that's when I decided to sell everything. And I went to Puerto Rico. I lived there for a year and fell in love with the island. And at that time, I definitely wanted to create a website. And I still, to this day, absolutely want to do this concept, to hold concerts, events, and gatherings to raise both money and awareness for various charities and important causes. To raise capital for charities. Yes, finally. Yeah. So my first concert that I want to do is to raise awareness among Latinos so that they go get checked for AIDS. Like Hector Labona died of AIDS, so did Frankie Ruiz, because they had that disease. And there are many Latinos who don't get checked out of fear.
But tell me something, Liz, because since I've known you, you've been very in love, passionate about Puerto Rico. Yes.
What happened there? Well, when I went to live in Puerto Rico,
Oh, you're Peruvian.
Yes, I'm Peruvian. I was born in Peru, but I grew up and was raised in California. So I've been in California since I was 3.
Altered your life in Puerto Rico.
It changed my life in Puerto Rico. So what happened? First started when I was in California. At that time, I was living with my brother and my cousins. So I was always with kids. So I was a tomboy. So in California, in Southern California, I was with a lot of Mexican Latinos. So I got into the wrong crowd. I was with the cholas. I would wear the dickies, the hairspray, everything. One year I dressed up as a chola for Halloween. And when I went to school, nobody knew I was in costume because that's how I dressed normally. I left. I was hanging out with my friends and my dad and mom didn't like it. So one day my boyfriend, who was an ex-cholo, dropped me off at home and my dad saw him and told me no, he had me on lockdown. So mom bought me a ticket to live in New Jersey. The day my dad gave my mom permission for me to spend the day with her, he took me straight to the airport and I never saw my dad again because he wouldn't let me leave the house. So I went to live in New Jersey for 6 months. So I left California listening to rap and being in that life. And I went to New Jersey where all my cousins lived. All my cousins. I never hung out with girls. It was always with guys. So I went with all my cousins. It went from rap to salsa. And that's where everything changed. I fell in love with the music, with salsa, with the parties we had in New Jersey. I could go out to clubs and dance. They gave me the advice so I wouldn't drink, but it was a different environment. And I didn't grow up with that. I fell in love with the music, with the family, with the culture that I never had in California because it was just me, mom, dad, and my brother. I never grew up with that. And when I came back, I had a boyfriend who was Puerto Rican. I think that helped a lot too. And, you know, when I got tired of it all, I got divorced. I was done working in the casinos and all that. I said, I want something different. I sold everything, took my money out of my 401k. And with 4 suitcases, I went to Puerto Rico.
Radical. Without thinking.
Yeah, because I said the worst that can happen is I lose all my money and I come back.
What has inspired one of your dreams? Do you want to build a hotel or create a hotel in Puerto Rico? They have mentioned it.
No, what I want to do in Puerto Rico is help the people of Puerto Rico become homeowners. I want to take the abandoned properties because many left the island after Maria, and there are still houses that need to be fixed. So going to Puerto Rico, buying those houses, fixing them up, and helping people become homeowners. Up to here in Las Vegas, not here. Well, in the United States, it's tough. You have to earn a certain amount. You need to put down a deposit for them to approve your credit. That's really difficult. All I want to do is seller finance.
Lending money to people to buy it?
Yeah, because if I buy them, I'm going to buy them in cash. I'm going to buy it cheaper because it's abandoned. It needs repairs and all that. And then I can use the loan. And if the payments have to be for 30 years perfect, 40 years perfect, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to have a mortgage to pay since I already own the properties. But I can be that bank and that help for that person.
And there, Puerto can help you. Do you buy foreclosures in Puerto Rico?
Of everything, but mostly what I buy in particular.
But I see that you're indeed very active in the court. No, in the auctions.
At the auctions, yes. They are at the Judicial Center.
I haven't done real estate in Puerto Rico. The market is different from here. Everything is different. And I realize that the market is different from the market here, in the center of Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Everything is really different. I started in Chicago doing flips. And when I went to Puerto Rico, I bought 3 houses in 1 month as soon as I arrived.
In Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico, I lived in Chicago 2008 to 2015. In 2013, I did my first flip. I did several more. In 2015, I returned to Puerto Rico, and there I bought 3 houses in the first 2 months that I was there. Those were some of my worst deals, because I bought them from a wholesaler. You know how it is. They give you a number, this, that, and doing the analysis more or less like they did in the United States. But the numbers in Puerto Rico are very different. Everything is really different. And the construction, and, well, they were terrible deals. It took me a long time. It took me approximately a year or so, a year and a half to finish it and sell it. Something that I would now do in 2 or 3 months and sell it 2 or 3 months later through the banks. But it's very different. The process, the financing, the permits, how to find the houses, the auctions, the bidding. In the United States, what I understand is that, because I have never been, but what I understand is that you go and give a percentage for the auction. In Puerto Rico, you have to go to the auction with all the money.
So it depends on the city, because the other day in the city where I am, in Cholito, Ohio, I never bought at an auction, but I have a friend who is buying at the auction, and he has bought several properties where I live there. And he tells me, you buy at the auction, but you buy them on paper. You have 30 days to bring the money. And I said, wow, that's perfect, because in 30 days you can get a loan.
You don't have to come with the case. That's what I've heard, like you bring a percentage or whatever. In Puerto Rico, no, in Puerto Rico it is, if you don't bring the money to the courthouse, to the judicial center for the auction, you won't get it.
But look, in Puerto Rico, I didn't do the business, but I studied the business. I don't know if you knew, when Robert Kiyosaki, he wasn't going, but he was with his Rich Dad, Poor Dad, this program over there in Puerto Rico. I ended up investing $10,000 in the program.
That's where I started, but in Chicago, $1,000.
Well, I started it in Puerto Rico, and something I noticed, well, the topic of cash auctions, but another thing is that in Puerto Rico, there aren't commercial banks like I mean like a harmony lending like there is here in the United States. In your case, how do you handle financing?
Private. Everything is private. Investor, my own capital, friends and family, as they say, relatives. That's how I started. Everyone, well, family, friends, my own money, little by little, building relationships and getting more capital that way.
So, you've had to build your portfolio, your network of private investors. Are they from Puerto Rico or are they also people from here in the United States?
My first investor actually was from the United States. The first time I bought in Puerto Rico was with an investor, a person I met at an RIA in Chicago, and he wanted to invest with me, and he invested with me in Puerto Rico for the first 3 days. And after that, I kept moving around, meeting people, family, friends. Right now, my biggest investors are business owners. They're people who have their own business, they're doing really well in their business, and they want to put some money to work.
And how is the approach? So, how do you meet these people? What approach do you take with them?
It's just that they've all been so unique and varied in various ways. It's never my intention to just sell to them in any way. It's about creating a meaningful and lasting relationship, and then it naturally comes. They become interested in what you're doing, and you give them the opportunity. I met some of my first investors while doing CrossFit. CrossFit isn't, a bit of a luxury. Yeah. And then what happens? A lot of the people who do CrossFit are professionals. A lot of them are doctors or engineers because usually it's more expensive than a regular gym. So, in my experience, the people who go to CrossFit, there's all kinds, but there are a lot of professionals. So, some of my first investors weren't really introduced to me. They were just people I met while working out. After that, well, I got referrals. I met another person, and little by little, I was connecting and building relationships.
So, you weren't necessarily going in with the intention of, I'm going to take this person's money. You just think, I'm going to make a friendship. And as the friendship grows, you realize, I imagine, that you ask him what he does, he asks you, you explain, and that's where
They find it interesting and want to invest. I met an investor at a networking event, and we're creating a fund together.
I mean, usually they are the ones who ask the first question, the first interesting initiative.
Right now, I have an investor with whom we are going to create a fund together, and I met him at a networking event of business and so on. They're from here, in the United States, people who are involved with Law 60 over in Puerto Rico, and they have a successful business. They're doing really well. Now we're going to develop a fund together and put in capital to make more money and grow it even more.
Is it for yourselves or do you plan to lend capital to other investments?
That's part of the plan. Initially, it's for me to develop what I have, but through the work I'm going to be doing, like the boot camps and all that, with the relationships I create there and the people I meet, I'll use those connections to help expand and grow and do more.
Super interesting because I was talking the other day with, you must know him, Sogus Usman, and he is also another person who loves Puerto Rico. And the other day we were talking and he tells me, as far as I know, there's no harmony. I tell him, well, there are a few here and there, but very few, very scarce, and not as structured as a harmony lending company here in the United States. And we were talking precisely about that, about being interesting among several people right here in the community, attracting capital, and forming a harmony lending institution. Yes, and compete with no one there because the competition really pays very little.
But something I've also just realized is that many people, they don't know how to evaluate properties, just like what's happening here. There are a ton of wholesalers who think they know how to evaluate a property and say what is a good deal and what isn't. For example, I have a group on WhatsApp and I haven't seen a single good deal in that group. They send things and it's like I get a lot of, oh, look, this is up to 8%. Mike, are you crazy? No, I can take that with my credit. But you have to be careful with that, right? And do you know my story?
Yeah, tell it. So I get a deal. And this guy, Jose, calls me. I tell him I have a soft deal. He says, oh, I'm interested, but the only problem is that it's at 8%. I'm not interested. And I hung up the call. But I was left with that feeling, like when you hang up and think, did I cut him off too quickly? so I decided to dig a little deeper. The next day I call him back and say, "Hey, can you send me the mortgage statement?" He sends it to me, and the assignment fee he was asking for was $5,000, and there were 0 closing costs. Nothing else was my entry fee. When he sent me the mortgage statement, I saw that the debt had been paid for 22 years, and there were 8 years left, and almost all of it was principal. So when you do the math, it was even less than 1% interest. So that was a lesson learned, not to just go by what you see at first glance, but to ask for a mortgage statement, whether it's good or bad, because I've seen cases on the other side.
Did you do it?
Yeah, of course. I bought it. And I bought it more for the terms because the mortgage is $1,100 and the rents are $1,100. So in my mind, I thought, I'm not going to lose, but I'm not going to win either, but I'm buying the loan. That's what I thought, right? And in 8 years, the house will be free and clear. I do 20 things, but I still have this nagging feeling that I wasn't going to be cash flowing. So I met this person who does midterm rentals, and they told me to furnish it. I went to Big Lots and bought Ashley furniture, which is good quality, but since it was at Big Lots, it was on clearance. I spent over $8,000 to move the whole house, and quickly, by noon, it was rented out. We have a contract with the insurance company for $3,500. So it was beautiful, though you always have to pivot, right? Hey, speaking of soft 2, I have a dilemma with soft 2 in Puerto Rico because I talk to a lot of lawyers. Okay, legal. Of course, does the same thing happen in the United States? I'm not surprised, but I haven't met anyone except you who has done soft 2 deals. Is there any difference between what you've seen here and what you've seen over there in Puerto Rico?
What happens is that in Puerto Rico, everything is done through lawyers, notaries. So most lawyers don't know how to do it, how to structure it, how the deed is done. Because the problem is that if you bring a deed and it's not well drafted, or it's not the correct deed, the property registry might not accept it. The property registry, that's a very different thing. Because the crime is the taxes, but when you buy a property, it's the title. Where it gets registered is with the property registry. And with the property registry, that's what determines who the owner is and who isn't. That's where you do your title study, checking the property registry and verifying the history.
And where the delicacy lies?
So if they don't know how to do it, for example, then the property registry, the person evaluating the task, might send it back for some reason. I have a lawyer who, ever since I explained that to her, she's just like, oh, yes, no.
But then, well, she didn't do it. You explain it to her and she openly does it.
She has done it more. Like when, for example, in a divorce, the property stays in one person's name. So he went and doesn't want to pay for it.
It's practically the same.
So that's the structure. Obviously, she tells me, look, but since my main business is flips, she tells me, but don't hold on to it, sell it because it has risk. They can accelerate the loan on you.
But it's the same risk that's here in the United States. And there are ways to handle it, right?
It hasn't happened to me. I haven't looked at how I would handle it in Puerto Rico. But, well, the first thing for me is that I've worked with banks, where I've talked to someone high up in the bank, in that area, and they know what I'm doing. It's like they know that I'm doing this, that I'm the one paying for them.
That are you?
Correct? They know that I'm doing the transaction, and they don't tell you anything.
Don't tell me.
The bank wants to get paid.
He doesn't want to pay at this particular moment, really at all, right now.
And those who say, oh no, that's illegal. Look, the bank has the option, the right to accelerate, but it doesn't have the obligation.
And that's what the clause says. They have the right, but not obligation.
So, well, that's where lawyers are given away. It's an experience and they get paralyzed. While they gave my lawyer away, for her, it was like, that's how it works.
And maybe going to go through a quick process because of the divorce issue, right? It's same topic, right? Maybe in a sub 2, when you asked me if the acceleration happens to me, I thought quickly, return the deed and make a land contract. But in Puerto Rico, I don't know if the land contract exists, but one option could be a lease option or a purchase option too, where the payment is to become principal.
We would have to look at that part. I haven't thought about what options I might have. It's just that I sell them quickly.
Ah, well, of course, you don't really have the need to give the loan. Indeed, indeed.
Right now I have one that I did like that, which I sold, but I sold it to my in-laws, so they're paying under the other name. Okay, that's how the case is made. I really do hope not, but perhaps it could indeed be.
But it's interesting because you're flipping with the existing loan, not necessarily, well, you bring private capital, which you already explained, but if an opportunity comes up, then you already have your capital there in the loan.
That's right, but the thing in Puerto Rico is that the auction process, the foreclosure process, takes quite a while. And I've had property that's up to, I did one about a month and a half ago where the arrears were $95,000.
And it's happening.
There's not even a floor.
So the person owed $95,000 to the bank?
Arrears,
Arrears?
penalties, legal stuff, blah, blah.
How many months were there? More than a year? Several years?
The process, which can vary greatly in duration, is sometimes quick and sometimes it takes a long time. This variability is something I still don't quite understand, and it often leaves me puzzled as to why it happens. I made a recent software that has been around since 2000. I think the demand, we're in 2024. I think the demand was like in 2017.
Just imagine that loan was from Maria easily. They stopped paying, I'm out.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, all kinds. I've had cases like that where the bank's initial lawsuit is from 10 years ago. It's like, how did it take the bank 10 years to take the property? And while I still don't have that part clear, I know there are different ways they can delay it. You can make a payment plan with the bank, but they raise the interest rates. One common thing is that they extend the term of the loan. Instead of 30 years, now it's 40, which lowers your payment. They do different things. You haven't been curious to do something in a case like that, maybe with like $90,000 in arrears, and do something like an ovation, where you take the loan over inheriting the $90,000 in debt, but how are you going to fix it and sell it? Obviously, you could settle that debt in a couple of months, yes, but the ones I've done are already in the foreclosure process, so they're very vulnerable to do that. But there was one I did recently where, in fact, I recorded a testimony with her last week, and she was in the foreclosure process. I don't know if it's true. Legally, I don't know if that part is true, but she was already in the foreclosure process. I contacted her, and it had been about a year since I first reached out, and she just hadn't been able to push herself to take action. When I see that the auction is about to happen, I say, look, here's what we can do. Get me the numbers. Let's see how I can help you. When I get the initial numbers, I say, okay, that makes sense. I can do the deal. The numbers make sense. Then she asks for another number to see the arrears, how much it was to bring it up to date. And when it comes back, it was like $30,000 more than the number they had given her before. I say, look, there's no way. The numbers don't add up for me. But I tell her, look, you have equity. You could do it on your own. For me, the numbers don't add up, but you could do it on your own and make something out of it. Then she tells me, I don't have a lawyer, I don't have anything. I get her a lawyer, I give her the lawyer, and she starts the process. The day she's on her way to the lawyer's office, which is 2 days before the auction, she calls me in the morning and says, look, I'm on my way to the lawyer, but I don't have the money to pay her. I have one option, I'm going to pay her now, but I don't have anything else. And I tell her, well, I'm going to help you. I have one option, I'm going to pay her now, but I don't have anything else. And I tell her, well, I'm going to help you. Let me see how I can do it. So I check and I say, look, let's do this. I'll pay the lawyer. I'll fix it. That's without expecting anything in return. Yes. Yep. Come on, we'll figure something out. I say, with the margin that's there, at least I can get my money back and maybe make something out of it. But you took a risk. I took a risk.
No contract, nothing whatsoever.
So you did it to help her. Well, faith. So I tell her that I'll take care of paying the lawyer. She starts the process, files for bankruptcy for the auction. I explain to her that during that period of time, I am going to work on fixing it up and then sell it. This is all happening while the bankruptcy process is ongoing. So I begin working on it diligently, making necessary repairs and improvements. I invest approximately $15,000 into the project, even though it wasn't much. Yeah, it was really committed. I fix it up carefully and thoroughly. I have it under contract to sell it, and the bank, with great attention to detail, that there were two of the biggest banks from the newspaper, and I tell the bank that the property is in foreclosure when they do the title study. And I say, yes, we know. That's why we're in the process of selling it. And with that, the debt will be settled. And what happens is that they literally set another auction date. So the bankruptcy went through, all that happened, and they set an auction date for the property. And I'm already in the project, I tell them. And I already have the money invested. I'm already in the process, and it's under contract for sale.
And they couldn't delay it, not even with a contract of. So there's already a commitment.
They were going to continue with the auction.
Ah, wow.
So I said, well, if I have no option, then I'll pay the arrears. I was left with no other choice, and decided that even though it would impact my financial returns, I would proceed to pay the outstanding arrears. I say, well, I mean, it affects my return, but it's going to be a short period of time, so I pay the arrears and the following week for money, again when I sell it. And it's because I say I'm not going to lose the money that I've already invested. So we do it. We're with the bank, and we literally close on the house the week before the auction. I think we closed on a Thursday and the auction was on Tuesday. Wow. So we closed there, the bank was paid, making sure they canceled it. And there I was with the bank. They canceled the auction, the law firm, and they canceled it, and we were able to do it.
I can imagine was days of pressure.
I was absolutely incredibly excited and so much thrilled right now.
And my lawyer was like, look, the people don't want to stop the auction there. It's just that the lawyer wanted to file a lawsuit for mortgage fraud.
Where's the fraud in that?
And indeed, my lawyer gets involved. She was really, really very upset, like really fighting, defending, and she knows what I'm doing, and she knows that I'm doing it with all the good intention to help her. And, well, nothing was left there. They were saying it's not mortgage fraud. Well, it's fraud. It's in the process, and we're looking to pay her. We want to pay what is owed. So well, we were able to do it. Thank God the profit wasn't what we made. We were lucky. On one hand, because the property appraised for about $20,000 less than what we had it under contract for, or $30,000 less than what we had it under contract for. I think it appraised at $280. We had it under contract for about $315. And the person, I think we ended up getting in at $305. Okay, but the work is the difference. So the pastor gives it under the table, doesn't give luck to the person to work the difference, and that they had the money because not everyone has it. Because if not, we would have had to go for appraisal. And there, almost, basically break even. And be careful. Everything worked out. Everything worked out.
What an incredible experience.
She made money. She made like the seller who was putting up the property. She made about $8,000. What has gone well? I covered my capital that I invested. I also made about $8,000. So I say, well, no, I invested a total of everything with the lawyer, which I know, but like 20 something. I made 8,000 pesos, or 100% on 20 something.
I know you do fix and flip, but hasn't it perhaps crossed your mind to occasionally do some wholesaling on a few properties here and there?
I've done like one or two, but they've been wholesales with people I know. I tell him, look, you do it. I had one in Carolina.
And that's why I'm asking you. You have a person interested in Puerto Rico and a local interested in Puerto Rico. Just in case another one comes up, well.
The idea is, as part of what I'm going to be working on with the boot camps, is that I have all these people now looking for deals for me, and we can do more of that type of transaction. But since most of the ones I bought were cash at auction, well, at least last year I bought 16 at auction, and I bought 21 in total. The rest were like cash. This year, most of them have been cash. Sorry, they've been from the bank, not from auction.
Or direct. I mean, REO.
Prisoner. Right now, actually, just yesterday, they accepted a few for me.
And how does it work? You need access to the lists, but not everyone has access to the lists.
Yeah, they're not public. The bank's pages from the bank.
It's just that I've seen them, but I thought that was a list they had there. Maybe of properties that weren't selling, but I don't know. I heard a rumor. I don't know how true it is. They have like their VIP list of VIP people?
No, as far as I know.
I mean, it's going to be the same bank page.
The bank's page, they send a list of people, but it's the same one that's on the bank.
Okay.
It's the page. For example, First Line does that. I've seen that VIP sends the lists. It's the same list that's on the page.
And that list, let's say you go to the website, see the property, do your calculations, and if you like it, you enter an auction with the bank or negotiate directly with the bank.
Through the bank's official email or through my personal email for official communication and correspondence and other related matters.
And can the banks themselves finance that property with that same bank?
Well, I would have to do it. But there, you lose an advantage. For example, I've bought this year about 7 somewhat popular properties, and I've won with higher offers because I'm buying cash.
And closing costs in Puerto Rico are high compared to the US.
Well, at least when, for example, I bought property from the bank about 3 weeks ago, the closing costs were around $700.
And what was the purchase price?
That was approximately about 25 people.
But why was it so low?
Lawyer? Well, you know, what I'm paying for the lawyer, the typical closing costs, the 0.5%, the lawyer. You see, the law states that it's 0.5 to 1. The lawyer, the notary, right, who is a lawyer, the notary earns between 0.5 to 1% by law. It can't be more or less by law. So as an investor in banks in the financial sector, what you actually pay is the 0.5%. It's like those who pay 1% do so because they don't know. Or bank, or the lawyer says, look, on a house worth $80,000, I'm not going to work for half. I'm going to work for 1%. I understand that. But my average on resales is about 1.15% in closing costs, you know, not counting the broker. So it's not really a major expense.
Something. It's me thinking. No, because the last time I bought my primary residence, which I later sold, I remember I bought it for 2.13 and the closing costs were about $12,000. But I remember it was a date loan. I brought like 4 or 5,000 more from this payment suddenly, but it was like $10K closing.
If you take the 0.5%, 230, so it's approximately 200, 230, 215. We're talking about approximately 4,000 or around 5,000, 130 for the 1%. And other costs are essentially property registration fees. But basically, when you're buying with a bank, you're paying double the notary fee because they have the mortgage deed and they have the registration deed. So you're paying 0.5% when you work with a bank. Well, how about that? Generally speaking, paying more for the deed. So it's double what I would basically, essentially, inherently, and in essence do if it were a cash transaction deed.
Now, the property you found is one that they haven't paid for since 2017. How did you find that property?
Doing a lot of research. So one of the things I do in Puerto Rico, unlike in the United States, is we have lists. There's no public list. There's no list that you can buy, and they're all the entities that are in the purpose. You have to create your lists. I personally think that on my list of items, there are definitely some pages that clearly show which specific auctions are coming up in the next month and a half or so. And also in the property registry, there are ways to find those properties that are in demand. But basically, I'm creating my own list with my team.
But it's the same process. You're trying to stop the auction.
Or perhaps you might want to consider buying it at the auction, you know?
The bad thing about getting to the auction is that now you bought with, of course, if you move forward, that's better.
For example, the condo I bought, which owed $26,000, was worth $97,000, and the payoff for the property was $307,000. The starting amount for the auction was $307,000.
And the debt was over $90,000.
Wow. But that condo, at a minimum, I should be able to sell for $600,000.
Nothing. And you bought it for 95?
Well, the O'Reilly was only at 95, that's why. But you didn't pay him. The person didn't want to. Yeah, we didn't reach an agreement. It's someone I know, and I wanted to help him. And we reached an agreement so that when the property sells, he will make more. He will have a good profit from the sale. Nice. But I structured it that way because I wanted the same thing. He wanted to help me. I could see that. If I were in his shoes, That's how I would want it, right? And he has a daughter, she's going to college. A person who is very generous, who always helps people. I didn't have. There are people who tell me, oh, you made like a super deal for him.
But in the end, it's not all about the money deal. You have to help people too.
It's a win-win. I'm going to make, at least I'm going to make a 40% profit.
Sure.
And he, well, maybe if I make a 40%, he's going to make like 100,000 pesos.
It's fine.
If I make 40,000 pesos, he's going to make like at least 80,000 to earn, and I make 100, which is very possible. It's to earn 200.
Okay. How do we review it? Super. Sure. I think the challenge is that the lists are public. The problem in Puerto Rico is that there's no way to do skip tracing as far as I know. It's like knocking on doors or doing detective work through Facebook here and there. And that's the job, I imagine.
And so I do that. I've done it, and I have my assistant who has helped me with that now, but it's not the same as in the United States, where it's really easy. Yeah, it's really easy. You put in someone's name, you put in the address, you put in the zip code, and you're going to get the information. So it's not like that much more difficult. Sometimes I go on, for example, I go on Facebook and I find them. If we have mutual friends, that's the best. Now, if not, I go into the photos. My biggest luck has been with photos because they are people who have maybe gotten into an MLM or something like that and have some photo saying Herbalife, and they have the phone number. Yes. And that's when I call them because it's really interesting, but many times it's been like that. It's like that's how I managed to count.
Look, I want to buy Herbalife. We can sit together and you.
And they say to me, look, but how do you do it? How do you know? How do you know? I went in and found your Facebook profile and saw exactly what you had posted. I recently called someone who couldn't do anything, like the property was owed too much. But a property that could be sold for $900,000, they owed like 700, something like that. But their original mortgage was like 300. So they've been years without paying it. And then I recharged, can you imagine? But I managed to get to the person. We have a mutual friend, the husband and the wife. They're not divorced. I was going to talk. So I find people who know both of them. I tell him, look, you can message him on Instagram. You can write to him. The friendship is mine. Like I explain it to him, and they wrote to him. So I got the husband because he works at go to the car and get the dealer's phone number. He can't find the phone anywhere, but he gets the dealer's phone number, calls the dealer, and asks about wheels, and that's where he talks to him. And he's like, oh, but let's keep going.
They are always on the defensive at the beginning. You have to let your guard down.
But when the assistant often makes me laugh because she sees how I interact with people and how I speak and sometimes even listen to their life story in order to create that error. And really, they see that you genuinely want to help them and that it can be a win-win situation. So she's left thinking, like, how the heck does she listen to that story? And she's left thinking, and they have long stories that I imagine sometimes make you want to cry and all that. It's good because that's where you can connect, right, with what you're really doing and know what they truly need. Because sometimes they themselves don't even know. For me, 2017 was a year that marked the history of Puerto Rico, well, Hurricane Maria, etc.
But speaking of the economy, I mean, I had friends who were in construction and went bankrupt before 2017. And Maria brought what I call a rotation of sectors. Right? Because for insurance companies and other industries were making money, while construction companies were losing money and going bankrupt. And when Mary comes, well,
there's a rotation in the sector. Many insurance companies went bankrupt. Construction companies started to thrive. And I've seen the complete transformation on the island. What I saw on the island in the coming years is a shortage of affordable properties. At a conference about 2 weeks ago, one of the biggest challenges in Puerto Rico was that they are building properties for $500,000, $1 million, because the numbers don't add up to make more affordable properties. I mean, the cost of construction, I thought they were doing it on purpose because that was the market coming to Puerto Rico.
It's a cost issue.
Most properties are not sold to Puerto Rican nationals. They say it themselves. I had a conversation after that conference with the president of the Builders Association of Puerto Rico, and most of the buyers are Puerto Ricans. Like the idea that all the gringos are coming to buy property and driving up the prices, that's a lie. What happens is that the same thing that happens in the United States is what sells. It's what sells to the gringos. But the reality is that out of the like 70, 80 deals I've done, only about 3 have been Americans or people from outside. And from that, one of them was husband of an American, and or they might be Puerto Rican and are moving to Puerto Rico. The other 2 were investments, but they wanted to have like an Airbnb or a vacation rental or whatever. But this happens everywhere. It happens in the United States too. But people are really selling that part of my experience. It's a phrase, and the developers themselves said it at that conference. Look, the people who are buying these houses are people from here. Right now, I bought a gated community that has been under construction for 20 years, and they are still building. I was in many houses, and on my street, the houses start at around 700,000 and go up to almost 1 million. And on my street, there should be about 20 houses, and there's 1 American. Everyone else is from Bolivar and Berlin. And it's like, where does it come from? Most of them are doctors, that's for sure. It's the most there is, like the neighbor next to the doctor, the one on this side of the doctor, the one over here by the doctor, the one over there by the doctor. It's like the most that...
Something happens, are you fine?
Yes, but I don't need... That's great. But most of the street is made up of young professionals or doctors or whatever. And they are doing very well.
So the cost of construction is what's driving up the prices? And there's a shortage of houses, so that's the combination. And inflation adds to that as well. But I think in Puerto Rico, it doesn't stop. I mean, the market keeps going, and they are selling houses. It's much better than many of the markets here.
Yes. Yesterday, the market hasn't been that affected. The most high-end, like extremely high-end, has been affected a bit. But that's when more people who are moving in come.
Law 60.
Law 60.
Yeah, but we're talking about cases of 5 million, 10 million.
15 million, 20 million. It's such a small fraction. And also, for example, the houses that I have a friend who sold a house for 13 million. Well, she's Puerto Rican. She sold it to a buyer, but she benefited from it. And she sold it because she wanted to, not because she was forced. So that type of houses, who is benefiting the most from the sale, are the Puerto Ricans. They already lived through them. That maybe they bought it for $1 million 15 or 20 years ago. I don't really see how there's an impact on what would be the lower class, middle class. Now in the high-end market, you can see that impact where values have increased, but the ones selling are Puerto Ricans. Overall, most of them are coming out really good. In general, maybe where you can see a bit of the impact could be in areas like San Juan. Additionally, in another similar area like that, it is possible that there's more outside money coming in. But the reality is that those particular markets already had a significant amount of outside money. I know a guy who I think has been living in Puerto Rico for many years, and he owns Medio Viejo San Juan. I had years all over the place.
He's been in Puerto Rico for many years.
And it's like, to me, that's been happening, in fact, for decades. Those areas like that.
And there are certainly many like him.
But they are areas that lend themselves to that foreign capital investment. But it's always been like that. It's not something new.
Of course, the typical Puerto Rican is not going to go buy a house in which they are going to be.
And still, yes. I have friends who have this apartment.
Of course, but it's not like the norm is I want my neighborhood with my garage.
You know, I don't know, it would be interesting to do a survey and see the number of people. For me, the majority of the people I see coming in are older folks Now it's mostly a lot of Airbnb, but who is renting those Airbnbs? I still think that in most cases, they are older folks. And speaking of Airbnb, there's still an opportunity in Puerto Rico for Airbnb, right?
I see it very really oversaturated, and I see the prices going down, right?
Yeah. The Airbnb strategy doesn't really work for me. I think a lot like Nelson says, it has become saturated. Yes, there will always be players who will stay in that market. They have already developed systems and processes to really sustain it. But in Puerto Rico, it's mostly about creating experiences. Because, I mean, if someone wants to get into hospitality, they need to create the experience, not just buy a house and rent it out. The experience also has to be created. Otherwise, there's no point. I've run into that myself, as I've said. I think of an experience as being for large groups or big families where you really see the benefit compared to a hotel. If you have a large group, they're going to have to more economical. It will be better.
Experience is not same.
In that case, there's an advantage. I would say that on Airbnb, there are properties that can accommodate 6, 8, 10, or 12 people and make it attractive by creating an experience for them. If not, well, at least they need to create the experience. Otherwise, I don't think it's viable. I have a friend of mine who was my student, and I helped him get started in my business with Airbnb. And he bought property that had land, a mountain there, with 60-degree views, a spectacular view. And he had a small existing structure. And from that, he made the Airbnb, a small house for couples. That's it. And he put in an inflatable jacuzzi and decorated it really nicely, and it's doing super well. And on the same land, I helped him with the financing, helped him evaluate it and all that. Now on the same property, he has a third one. Oh, that's great. He kept building, and he bought it for, I think, $125,000. Wow. Mystery. Let's go to Puerto Rico. Let's do it. You can find these opportunities, but you have to believe in it. Yes. And that's what I want to do too when it comes to Airbnb, because it's also about giving houses to people and giving them a way to pay for it.
If you live downstairs, you can do Airbnb upstairs and give the person the house along with the business so they can have their income. But the reason I fell in love with Puerto Rico was because of my experience getting to know the people and exploring. My friends who live in Puerto Rico tell me, you know Puerto Rico better than I do. Well, I've been everywhere. I was going around with my TomTom up and down the whole island. I always used to go to the town festivals and everything. And it's something that people who go to Puerto Rico on vacation don't get to experience. And that's what changes people who want to do more for the island to fall in love with the island. My cousin went to Puerto Rico for the first time with me last year, and I took her to the National Salsa Day. Did she go with us? Yes. You met her? She fell in love with Puerto Rico. She tells me and she's not one to go to the beach. She says the beaches are beautiful, but when you really connect with those people who touch your heart, it changes your life in profound and meaningful ways. If someone is watching this video, they could contribute something valuable and significant to what I'm currently doing and what I would like to do in Puerto Rico, which is a place of great potential and opportunity. I was also going to ask you, because I think we talked a bit about co-living in Puerto Rico, which is an exciting and innovative concept. I'm focusing on that here in the United States. What is co-living?
Don't know what co-living is?
Co-living is when you have a house that has a lot of bedrooms. And if it doesn't have many bedrooms, you add more bedrooms to the house and rent out the rooms. So for someone who is in a situation, the situation here and around the world is tough. There are people who work full-time and can't afford to pay rent or are living in their cars. So what we're doing is renting the room for $700, $750, depending on the market. And it all comes included. They have their room, they have water, electricity, internet, everything. That's not where I'm going to live my whole life, but it works for now. Let me breathe a little, have a quiet, safe place where I can live and set up my things. And then I can move on to the next chapter of my life. We're doing that in cities and near places where people work, like a Walmart, a Sam's Club, or something like that, where those people want to rent to be close to work so they can recover. I'm doing that right now with my partners in Memphis, Tennessee. My part of what I'm doing is also helping Latinos to invest in real estate without having to have all the experience to do it. If they have funds, many Latinos who come here to work, they have money that they don't invest. It just stays in their account. Under the bushes and all that every day with the prices of things that is losing value. I met a couple who sold their investment house. They're a bit older. They don't want to deal with a tenant or renter. They don't want to be homeowners and handle all the problems that come with owning a house. I said, look, I have an opportunity. You can invest that money. We're only paying interest payments and your money is against the property. So if something happens to me and that property has to be sold, your money is secured by that property. The property is sold and that debt is paid off. But while we're working on the project, you're collecting that money every month because I'm paying you your monthly interest. So your initial money is already there. And the gentleman said to me, yes, I love that idea. Don't worry. I gave you an example of $500 a month. That's the tarot, my car payment. He said, yes, I like it. And I said, look, if I know other Latinos who are in the same situation and need a way to make money, connect me with them and I'll present the opportunity to them. Now I already have money for the project I have right now, but more is going to come because I want to buy more houses. Do that so that people have a home.
And in your case,
In Puerto Rico,
well, I think it's a good strategy. Yes, it's not necessary, but housing is affordable. The rents, the purchases, for most people, and the cost of living for me in Puerto Rico, at least compared to where I live, is more expensive in Puerto Rico than where I live in Ohio. I feel it every time I go to Puerto Rico. The biggest problem in Puerto Rico is electricity, which is quite high. And fuel is also more expensive. But the advantage that I think we have in Puerto Rico, on the other hand, is the services, which are cheaper than in the United States. And enjoying life is more affordable.
yes,
In Puerto Rico,
the beach is free.
let's go to the beach. And for those who don't have much money, we go to the beach. Yes, we make some skewers there and that's it. That's how it goes. You go to the river, you go to the... Yes, Puerto Rico is very affordable to live. Yes. Let's see.
Besides, the atmosphere is naturally enjoyable.
And there's so much to see and do that if you have a kayak or whatever, you can keep yourself entertained. You don't need to go spend money at a Disney or whatever. Nature that we can enjoy, well, that makes me happy. So I think the cost of entertainment and such is much more important. And about the services, because if you want to pay a plumber, a craftsman, all those kinds of things are more affordable. But I really like that strategy. It's something I've talked about with people too. Maybe do something in that area.
If they were going to do it, which town would they do it in?
Well, anyone
Anyone?
in the metropolitan area and its surrounding regions.
Wouldn't it look good? Maybe in one of these very rural towns like Corozales, Ayuya, something like that?
I don't know.
From your perspective, there are a lot of people with a lower profile, right? Of course. But there's less work there. That's true. So we would have to assess the market.
I was thinking about areas like that with everything that's happening with people buying. And then the one I told you about, I think it was Bianca who made a report that someone bought a building and everyone had to move. That's for the elderly. I don't know. You do what you do.
Large aging population? Yes.
I don't know if you've seen the video by Tracy Koa where she wants to do co-living for seniors. And I love that idea for Puerto Rico.
Because it's truly phenomenal. There's indeed a very substantial amount of federal money involved.
But also so that they aren't alone to be able to be in that community, because sometimes many of their children don't visit them or the kids live far away. It's sad to see them there alone, but at least if everyone is downstairs in a house, you can set up a living room, create a space, and from there, other businesses can also emerge. You can start a tourism company that brings them out for a day, like to the beach or to explore the island. They can bring in young people and create a YouTube channel where they teach them how to cook or share their stories, because those stories are fading away.
I love it. You can get a house.
Move away. but there's so much history, right? And the people who have lived on the island their whole lives to share that story, when they no longer have their children or family, who are they going to talk to?
They already have their own business set up.
And in Puerto Rico, the population keeps aging. Yes. Well, all the young people are leaving the island and the population keeps aging. Any business that has to do with that aging population, which has so many needs and demands, is something that can be capitalized on and can also be a service for society and the community and can be beneficial. Yes, it is advantageous. I teach in Puerto Rico, and there are many needs and opportunities, and it is helpful. There are needs everywhere. To give you an example, around 2007, I think they were building about 14,000 houses a year. Last year, approximately 700 microhouses were built in total throughout the year.
Wow,
Wow,
that's pretty radical indeed.
the need for properties, for new products in the market is huge.
You know, my little sister has been looking for houses for a while, and she tells me she can't find any.
The one I bought in September, I was on the waiting list for this development since 2021.
But look, on the other hand, I mean, it's good for you. Because for the flip area, it gives you emotional stability. So you're going to sell it?
Yes, indeed, absolutely. That part isn't everything. Indeed, it's just a part of the story.
How long do your properties stay on the market? How quickly do they move?
My average is a little over 6 months from when I buy it to when I sell it. But most of that is because of the bank.
That's why, but when you list it, it's different, right? Because 6 months with the rehab pro, correct? Or once it's listed, how long does it take to sell?
I haven't given the greeting. Because what happens is that it usually goes under contract pretty quickly. The problem is,
The buyer's loan approval, correct?
especially because most of the properties I sell are under $200,000, under $200,000, many of the buyers come with government assistance.
For housing, my little sister has the housing one right now.
I mean, Plan 5. And the problem is that the housing bank really takes 3 to 4 months for approval. For that reason, there are many investors who accept it. And there are other aids called R3, which are for properties that were affected by Maria and Irma, and they give them $160, $180, $200,000 to buy a house, and that's money that comes from federal sources. Both are victims. It was like a cause of
I mean, but she must have lost the house.
correct, or that she lost the house, or that the house is in a condition or something that they can no longer live in. I had an aunt whose house she lived in was no longer considered habitable. They gave her a voucher for 20 or something like that, $1,000. And with that, she bought a house. Interesting. And if there are 4 bedrooms, I think they even have up to 2. Imagine they give her a check, but what happens? That can certainly be given to Siamese, and many stakeholders don't accept it.
Because they don't want to wait.
There's so much demand. Why would I wait literally 6 months to sell a house?
And if they definitely have a trailer loan, that's costing them.
I mean, can't get that check before the process. They have to be in the process of getting a loan already approved with the bank.
Government.
But well, like every opportunity, as you might expect,